Welcome to episode 4 of Mets Off Day Live. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Chelsea Sherrod, and joining us today is Athlete Logos Dan Abrams, who's been doing some incredible work that you've all seen all season, and Jomboy Media's Jack Oliver, also known as Jolly Olive. We're going to talk all things Mets over the next half an hour. We're also going to give away an awesome Athlete Logos home run Apple neon chain, which you probably see behind Dan's shoulder over there. And we will also take some fan questions live as they come in. So make sure you get your questions in to us. But first, welcome to the show, Jack and Dan. How you guys doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Doing very well as well. Nice to see you guys.
Yes, I'm sure, everyone is feeling great, especially after these last few wins from the Mets. Vibes are a lot higher than they were the last Mets Off Day Live. Okay, before we get into this turnaround, that the Mets have been having over the last week, let's talk about what they were doing the last off day. Here's how some of the Mets spent it. Francisco Lindor went to the zoo with his family. Mark Canha went to Aska, Swedish 2 Michelin-starred restaurant in Brooklyn. And Brett Baty posted a picture of him and Eduardo Escobar on Instagram relieving the game the day before. So, Jack, let's start with you. Which off day sounds the best? Which one would you join?
I think as a fan, the Baty and Escobar one warms my heart the most because I just like seeing those two doing anything together. And we all know Escobar is like the best teammate possible to have back there. But I think Francisco Lindor Zoo Day sounds like the best time possible if I were to be there.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I would say at this stage of my life, I would love a good meal, but I have a 4-year-old who has been asking to go to the zoo for quite a while. So I think that would be the choice.
Yeah. All right. I like the zoo too. I'll go with the zoo. All right. Mets get to know you. Dan, starting first, and then we'll go to you, Jack. Tell us how your Mets fandom started.
Well, I would say I was raised to not really have a choice in the matter. From a very young age, my father took me and my brother to games. He had a Saturday plan at Shea Stadium. So we went to every Saturday home game until I was probably 15 or 16 years old. And that's how it started. And that's where my love affair for Shea Stadium also began.
All right, Jack.
Like Dan, I was born into it as well. I was a little bit later down the line. I think my first real season getting into it was the first season where Citi Field was built in 2009. Obviously not a great season for the Mets, but I've stayed loyal. My dad got into them because they were coming off winning the World Series in '69. So you just kind of hopped on that bandwagon, and I'm still waiting to see my first, but I think we'll get it someday.
Hopefully it's coming soon, Jack, for all of our sakes. All right, Dan, what made you go from being a fan to creating neons of the team, and what's your favorite neon if you have one?
Well, I would say when I first started Athlete Logos, the thought was that athletes would be branding themselves with logos. This was 8 years ago, with more logos and shirt designs, and I wanted to provide that. But it quickly became more of a Mets fan page. It was an Instagram to start. And when Cespedes hit a walk-off, I don't remember, it was a very big walk-off the year that they went to the World Series. That was the first neon I made. And as soon as I posted, I realized that I hit something. And I've been doing them for 6 years. Nostalgia is really strong. People love to see them. So every time I do one, I still get a kick out of it. It still reminds me of Shea. In terms of my favorite one, I'd probably say the Andy Chavez catch because I was at that game. I know the first thing a lot of people say is, oh, they lost. But I will die on the hill that was the greatest defensive play in the history of the sport. And they turned 2, and the fans went crazy. And the actual silhouette, the neon of the snow cone, and it's just, to me, that's the best neon. Hopefully, like you just mentioned, hopefully there's a better one coming when they win the next World Series. But up to date, I'm going to go with that.
No, I love them so much because it's, you're taking parts of the old and bringing it to the new. And of course, we all love a nostalgic moment. All right, Jack, what made you take your fandom and turn it into something that you now do professionally?
I wrote creatively a lot in college, and I didn't have a lot of friends that also watched baseball, so I never really got to chat with people about fandom. And I remember in 2019 they went on that crazy run in the second half to almost make the playoffs, and that was one of the most fun times I had as a fan. I remember not being able to really share that with anybody, and it was kind of upsetting to me. So the first opportunity I got, I started making my own content, and eventually that began like a stepping stone path to landing here.
Awesome. I love that. Okay. So last show, like we mentioned, we were concerned after the Mets dropped 9 of 12 against some of the bottom tier teams in baseball. Everyone was going crazy. Everyone was saying, should we start panicking now? following the off day, the team did lose their series to the Reds. They split their series with the Nationals, and then the tides began to take a turn as they've now won 2 of 3 against the Rays and swept the Guardians, complete with 2 walk-off wins and 2. So, Dan, let's start with you. How are you feeling right now about the team after this turnaround?
I'm looking for parade tickets, to be honest. I'm all in. They're back. As far as I'm concerned, there's a saying in baseball: you're never as bad as you look on a losing streak, and you're never as good as you look on a hot streak. I get it. I didn't think they were that bad. The world wasn't really on fire. They're just struggling. And now that the snowball turned, they got momentum on their side. I really think they're about to go on a heater.
All right, going all out, Dan. I like it. Jack, how about you? How you feeling?
I'm trying to temper myself a little bit. I'm still really enjoying this, but we saw them earlier in the season. They couldn't get starters to go 6. They couldn't get they couldn't get everything to click at one time. And now all of a sudden, everything is firing on all cylinders. It's a lot of one-run slim victories, but they're getting the performances they need. And it's heartening as a Mets fan, because I think for the first month and a half, we were all like, oh, is 2022 just kind of an anomaly? Is that gone by the wayside now? And these last 5 games have felt exactly like last season.
Yeah, they're grinding it out and they're going the distance. And I mean, a win's a win, slim or not. Okay.
Yes.
You both are very active on Twitter during Mets games, especially during this recent hot stretch. So let's take a look back at both of your Twitter accounts. We will start with you, Jack. So before this turnaround started, may have been the reason for you tweeting this on May 16th. So you said, by this time last year, the Mets had the combined no-hitter, 8-run comeback in Philly, Alonso walk-off bomb off Gallegos, comeback in St. Louis, and Max Scherzer's home debut against San Francisco. And then you wrote, I cannot recall a single signature moment from any of their wins so far this year. It is painful. Jack, take us behind the scenes of that tweet on May 16th, the day before the Rays series began and after you at Citi Field for the Mets loss to the Nationals.
That was a man who was very sad from going to Citi Field for the better part of 5 weeks and not seeing any victories. I'd been on a bad losing streak in games that I went to. And after that specific loss, I don't even remember what happened in the game. It was just, it was tough, because I was remembering all the good moments we had through just 2 months of the season last year, and all the good moments that were in front of that as well. And we were a 500 team, and I couldn't recall any specific moment from any win. And I did not think that the spawn of that tweet would be this past week of games that we had and all the moments that have come with that, because now we basically have 2022's entirety in a week span. But I'm glad that the timing was pretty much impeccable on that tweet, because now I can say, I guess I was the catalyst there.
I was about to say, either you can see the future or the Mets just read your tweet and they took that pretty personally.
I'm cool with either. I really am.
All right. So then the next morning, Dan, you released this shirt that said, let the kids play. Dan, how long had you had that shirt ready to go? Be honest.
Well, the thing is, I try not to ever say anything negative on Twitter. I try to always be positive. So I had it in my head, but until they called up Vientos, I wasn't going to post it, because I don't want it to be a shot at current players or management that they're not playing them. But now I will say, since then, I'm ready to scream that at anyone who doesn't want to play the kids, because people saying Alvarez is going to go down or Vientos isn't going to play every day. The way this has turned around and been on the same timeline as the guys coming up, if you watch this team every day and don't think the energy has changed since the kids came up, regardless of what the analytics say, I mean, they have to play now. To me, it's black and white.
No, absolutely. And so, Dan, the question really is, do the kids get the credit for this turnaround, or who does get the credit for this turnaround?
Well, I think that everyone does. I think Verlander had a great answer last night in the post game where he said these guys stayed positive even when they were doing bad. Shout out to the veterans who kept level head during the struggles, because really, as a veteran player, when they were struggling and they're getting interviewed in their locker after the game, and they know whether they're not on social media or not, they're getting blasted for whatever their answer is. No one wants to hear we're going to be better or this or that. Yeah, the kids came up and provided a spark, but also the guys who stayed level-headed and grinded and didn't say, the world is tumbling, the world's on fire, really helped. So I think it's a collective effort. They all deserve credit for it.
Yeah. Jack, how about you? Who gets the credit here?
I mean, it's hard not to say the kids, because if you even think to who's scoring runs during these great rallies, it's always the kids that have been on base.
Right.
Francisco Alvarez drawn, big walks against Shane Bieber is a small point of how good he's been outside of that. I think it goes to leadership at the end of the day. I think, a lot of people have had gripes with a Buck lineup here and there or Bucks management decisions, but a level head at the top goes a really long way. And I think these are a lot of different personalities to meld and mold together. And you have the extremeness of the veterans on one side and these really, really young kids on it. Francisco Alvarez is 21 years old. To get all of these guys to act as a cohesive unit, it comes down to the leadership keeping a level head and not leaning into the tide of, oh, maybe this team isn't for real this year. So I think that's where my affinity lies.
No, yeah, I 100% agree. It seems like there's kind of been like a mindset shift or a shift in perspective, and everyone's bought in, and you can see it in how they've been playing together. Jack, do you have a favorite Mets tweet so far that you've let out this season?
Oh, God. I guess the follow up to the signature moments one, where I kind of got to recount everything that happened in the last 5 days, and it was the same amount of lines as the previous tweet, which was really cool because I think not even a week removed from feeling like you're at rock bottom. Now I feel like this team can go out there and beat any team in baseball.
Yeah, and we just heard Dan say, get the parade ready. I mean, we're all waiting for it now. He
Me
called it out. All right, speaking of the kids, let's get into the baby Mets. After his walk-off win over his former team on Friday, Francisco Lindor revealed to the world the nickname for the trio of Mets rookies, that being the baby Mets, which includes Francisco Alvarez, Brett Baty, and the latest addition, Mark Vientos. Dan, you tweeted the babies graphic with Brett Baty, Francisco Alvarez, and Brett Baty after the Mets' second walk-off win in 2 days. Take us behind the scenes. How did that go from a tweet by @Justin Saporita to viral graphic less than 24 hours later? Did you have that plan before the tweet, or is that just the start of the creation?
Well, it's funny, I always say I'm very grateful that I have the following that I have, because I remember when I had 4 followers on Instagram and it was my family members. And now it's at the point where as soon as Lindor said it, I was watching a post game, he said it, I knew people were going to be tweeting at me, you have to make something for the baby Mets. So then I'm watching my phone, I'm getting tweets like Justin and people on Instagram, what are you going to do, baby Mets? One person said they should have letter blocks, which was a great idea. So I started a little bit at night. At that time, it's like 11, 12 at night. So I went to bed. I woke up at 4 a.m. on Saturday to start, to make sure I finished it, because I feel, first of all, I had stuff to do on Saturday, but also I feel like as a content creator and with t-shirts, especially, it's a race. You got to be first. Also, it has to be cool. But I had to get up and draw it. And then I was hoping it would have that reaction. And I'm very glad Mark Vientos actually sent me a DM on Instagram. I need that shirt. So I'm glad that they liked it and that a fan base took to it.
Yeah, that's so cool. Oh, that's so awesome. Jack, you tweeted that both Brett Baty and Francisco Alvarez are the National League Rookies of the Year. It obviously can't be both of them, but who is your early pick and why?
It's a really good question. I mean, they both are building really impressive cases. Obviously, you got to recognize how much younger Alvarez is and how much tougher of a position catcher is. But I really do feel like the sky's the limit for Brett Baty right now. I think every at bat he just looks better and better. He's going the opposite way off lefties. He's hitting home runs off lefties. His glove looks fantastic in the field. And I think it's really interesting that was the main thing that I think Mets leadership was worried about. Can his defense translate to the major league level? It's been one of the best tools he's shown so far as a big leaguer. I think Brett Baty, if he stays healthy, he's going to have the keys at third base for the rest of the season. Nothing is going to get in his way. And I think that he has the best shot of any of the baby Mets, though I think they're all going to put up pretty good seasons.
Yeah, he's been incredibly impressive. All right, Dan, what's been the most exciting part of seeing the young kids making an impact at the big league level?
The thing I really like is that the 3 of them they say, Alvarez said, these guys are my brothers. They seem so close. It's so cool that they get to all do it together and that they went through the minors together. And even when one came up and the other ones weren't up, you could see on their Instagrams and their Twitters, I know you're coming soon. So now watching them as a unit, and hopefully there'll be another member soon, is really fun to see these young kids living their dream all together.
Yeah, you can just tell that they like playing with each other. You can just see the enjoyment there from all of them. Do either of you see any way Francisco Alvarez could get sent down with impending return of Tomas Nido and the eventual return of Omar Narvaez? Jack, I'll start with you.
I think there will be riots in the streets if that is the case, just because, I mean, the Mets have a good problem on their hands. They have too many good options when it comes down to Nido and Narvaez coming back. Narvaez looked good the first couple weeks of the season. Nito, we know, is a defensive whiz and knows the staff well. But I don't think anybody in the Mets brass is even considering sending down Alvarez at this time because he's really starting to look comfortable. And I think everybody in the building, even if you're not a baseball savant, you know that Francisco Alvarez is finding his footing. And if you go back and you look at his minor league splits from every level, he takes about a couple weeks to a month to get acclimated, and then he starts to go. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now.
Yeah. Dan, what are your thoughts?
I will hope that Jack is right. And,
Me too.
from watching this team, you would think, exactly like you said, how could you possibly not send him down? How is that even a thought? But then you have Buster last night on ESPN saying it. And this team does have, or management does have a tendency to stick with veterans. And I don't know. For team morale, for Alvarez's morale, for just how you're going to win a game today, I don't see how you could send him down. But at the same time, if I had to bet money, I wouldn't be 100% sure they're not going to do it.
Right. But especially given the way that he's been playing, just like you both mentioned, I mean, got to keep him in there, I think. All right, let's talk about Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso's power is unstoppable, as we all know, homering in 4 of the last 6 games while also being the ultimate cheerleader in the dugout. Jack, first off, you called his grand slam on Friday night. How do you keep on doing this? Please let us know. And do you think Pete can keep up his home run pace? He's got 17 through the first 48 games of the season, putting him on a 51 homer pace.
I mean, to answer the question of how I keep doing it, I don't know. It's just throwing stuff at the wall,
You're obviously psychic. Like,
I think that
let
has
me know
to
the
be
lotto
the case.
numbers.
I have to use my powers for good at this point.
Yeah.
In terms of his pace right now, it's obviously incredible. And I think every Mets fan has always felt that Pete could put up 50 in any season like he did his rookie year. I think the big thing is that, Pete comes and goes in waves. He had a really hot start to the season, cooled down when the Mets, got cold, because when Pete Alonso goes, the Mets goes, and vice versa. With Pete, I think it's when he's working good at bats, taking his walks, still taking his singles when he can get them, that you really start to see the home runs come in droves, because his approach is much better. It's less off balance. He's not chasing pitches as much. And if Pete can get locked into a consistent mode of approach, there's no ceiling to how many home runs he could hit. And I think 50 is well within the realm of possibility.
Yeah. All right, Dan. So you've made a ton of Pete Neons in your time, to name a few. The double champagne flute from last season's postseason clinch, the walk-off where he shot his helmet onto home plate, the stretch from first base last year, and of course, a classic Pete grand slam and bat toss. Which was your favorite to make?
The homer, the free throw was really exciting, because that night when they won, that was a 4:00 game or a 1:00 game. But I was doing that at night, and everyone was so excited about that win that I remember while I was doing it how happy the whole feeling was. But I would say my favorite is the grand slam with the bat toss, because the animated ones are always cool to me. And it seems to be, it's turned into what he does now. When he hits a home run, he grabs the bat by the barrel, flips it upside down, and then flips it. And that was like one of the first times he did it. So I really like that one. And I've been able to use it. It's become evergreen now.
Yeah. So how do you guys feel about his most recent celebration, the wave that he does, like he did on Sunday? Dan, how do you feel about that?
I don't even know I don't know. You know what? I've been on a lot of sports teams. I've had a lot of friends where we play things, and he's the type of guy who everyone would laugh and think it's hysterical, and you love to have him on your team. I don't want to rate on Olympic scale 1 to 10 the beauty of it, but it's very, very fun.
Yeah. How about you, Jack? What do you think of the recent celebration?
You got to learn to laugh at yourself. And I think Pete Alonso has been a goofball his entire time here. And I think it's great because, you're playing with younger guys now who have that kind of sense of humor probably. And it's great to lean into it and, get them feeling like they're part of the mojo and part of the team. And I think they love it too. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. All right. We're all for it. Okay. Yeah, speaking of home runs, I think we've made the fans wait long enough to hear who the winner of the Athlete Logos Home Run Neon chain is. Dan, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the fabulous prize?
If you don't have, like me, if you're not the type to wear a gaudy, large home run lit up chain on your chest, can also be mounted on the wall like it is there. And the winner is a Twitter handle, letter KC045. And we will send it to you as soon as we're done with this.
Awesome. Okay, so shout out to KC045. Congratulations. That's a really cool chain. We need to see that at every single game that you attend. So please wear it to every game. We will
That's
point
a good
you
stipulation.
Out.
I like that.
SNY will be in touch to provide more information on how to receive your prize. if you're looking to get one of these yourself, you can want to check out any of the other things or any other swag that Dan is creating this season. You can head on over to athletelogos.com. Okay, super cool that we just gave away that chain. I know everyone's been waiting to hear about that giveaway. All right, let's head over to one word and why. We will be talking about the rotation. The Mets rotation have thrown 4 quality starts in the last 5 games, with all but Carlos Carrasco throwing 5+ innings of ball, giving up 3 runs or less. So, of course, that's not bad. With that, we're going to do some one word and why with the guys in the rotation. Let's start with Justin Verlander. The man is 40 years old, and he threw an 8-inning gem. Let's start with you, Dan. One word for Justin Verlander.
I would say he's a beast. I mean, he's the type of guy who gets stronger late in games, which he did last night, and late in his career. I mean, at this stage of his career, to be able to perform the way he is, he's a very professional pitcher, but he seems quiet. He's not as outwardly emotional like Max is, but you could tell that he has a fire to beat the other guy and the other team, and I really think that he's a beast.
Jack?
I'm going to go with terrifying, because the only guy that I can really liken a 40-year-old pitcher throwing 96 miles per hour down the gut as Randy Johnson. And Randy Johnson is just as terrifying as any starting pitcher comes. Verlander's performance last night was unbelievable. It was exactly what the Mets needed. And hopefully we get more and more of that throughout the year.
Yeah, that's exactly why they acquired him. All right, Jack. Max Scherzer. One word for him.
Improving is what I'll say. That's kind of a cop-out a little bit. But Scherzer's outing yesterday was definitely encouraging. You know, the velo was still kind of down, 92, but Max Scherzer looked vintage yesterday. His curveball looked awesome. And, I mean, the Mets are going to need him. They're going to need 6 innings out of him every time out to help out that bullpen and to be, you know, part of this 1-2 punch that's supposed to carry us.
Exactly. Dan?
I would say intense. I mean, that's what I get every time I see him. I love the shot of him in the dugout before the game starts, and he's just sitting there waiting to go. Every reaction he has on the mound, I just, as someone who have played sports, that's what I always wanted to be like. That's what I love to see. That's what Keith Hernandez was. Which, I mean, if you really think about it, I've never seen any baseball player, let alone a pitcher, be as intense as Scherzer. I asked my father, who's been watching the Mets his whole life, and no one has ever seen someone as intense as Scherzer. And it's not bravado. He doesn't do it for show. He's that locked in for those 2 hours that he's pitching, and I really love watching him.
Yeah. Okay. Dan, Carlos Carrasco. One word for him.
I think I would say solid. I think he's a solid 4th or 5th guy right now in his career. Obviously, he's not where he was when he was younger, but I still think he gets guys out. I think when he's healthy, if he's healthy, he's a piece that they need. He eats innings, and he's going to get through 5 or 6 innings to get to the bullpen. So I'm hoping he can just be solid the rest of the year.
Jack?
I think it's finesse for me, because Carlos Carrasco, he's not going to overpower you with anything at this point in his career, but he can really be successful if that changeup works. And, you know, we saw it in spades after that rough first inning in his first start. If Carlos Carrasco can find the zone with that strikeout pitch, he can give you 6 solid innings. He can be the 5 in this rotation and, you know, carry a lot of weight for a bullpen that's had to do a lot of work early on.
Yeah, a lot of work. All right, Tyler McGill. Jack, one word for him.
I think promising. You know, the thing with McGill is that he hasn't really dominated in any outing this year, but he's kind of always gritted it out and really battled and tried to give you 5 or 6, even when he doesn't have his best stuff. He's still got velocity. He's the most youthful arm in this rotation. And when he has stuff firing on all cylinders, we know how good he can be. I'm hoping that he continues to show signs of promise and can go out there and give you a quality start each time out.
I appreciate the optimism, Jack. I appreciate the optimism. All right, Dan, Tyler McGill.
I would say he's evolving. That's what I think. I think especially having Verlander and Scherzer, I remember in spring training, they had him and Peterson, where Verlander was watching all their bullpens in Port St. Lucie and giving them tips. And I think he's learned, you know, last year, I think it was last year when he said he wanted to throw 100. Now he's doing more what Verlander does, where he's saving some for late innings. I still think his best pitching is ahead of him. I still think he's very young. And as Jack said, his arm is fresh. And I think he's evolving. I think he's still got a lot of good coming to him.
Yeah. Okay, last one for you both. Kodai Senga. Dan, start with you.
It has to be the ghost. I mean, what other one word could it be for Senga? I think Senga really. You asked Jack earlier about the Rookie of the Year. I think he has a very good chance of winning Rookie of the Year. I know that because he had a professional career in Japan, he may not be thought of as a baby Met, but he really is. He's never pitched here. It's a new ball. Everything's new to him. So he really is a rookie. And the way he pitched last start was dominant. And I still think as the weather warms up and he gets more accustomed to the 5 or 6 days they're giving him and everything else about American baseball, I think he has potential to be dominant as the season wears on.
Yeah, it doesn't get more dominant than 12 strikeouts. All right, Jack, how about you? Kodai Senga.
Well, I was gonna say ghostly, but I guess I'll switch it up from Dan. I'll say exceptional, because I think what gets lost in yesterday's doubleheader and the dramatic win to start the Cleveland series is that I think Kodai Senga had the best start of anybody this week. 12 strikeouts in 6 innings against one of the most potent lineups in baseball, and that was when he had his A-plus stuff, and that's exactly what the Mets paid for this offseason. I think a couple people scoffed at the notion of his contract and how much money it was. But I think the Mets realize how good Kodai Senga can be when he has his best stuff. And he's just been an absolute joy to watch so far. If he can keep those walks down, I agree with Dan. There's no reason why he can't win Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. And Dan, your Ghost Fork logo has been seen everywhere, including by Kodai Senga or on Kodai Senga's head. How did you get that hat to him? And has he contacted you about it at all?
Yeah, actually, when I signed him, when I first heard of the pitch, the first thing I did was I made a neon sign, an actual neon sign, and I sent it to Port St. Lucie when he got here. And he replied on Instagram DM, and then I used Google Translate to have a nice conversation with him. And
Awesome.
Ever since then, anytime I make a shirt or a hat, I always send a couple to the guys. And I have to say, it was very, very thoughtful that not only does he wear it after the start, but he put this LF gem in his locker and he tilted it so it'd be seen by the camera. So he's a very thoughtful guy, and I've spoken to him and the translator on Instagram about getting them some more stuff, and I'm very grateful that he supports me that way.
Yeah, that's incredible. Oh, love to see it. Okay, we do have a fan question, and it comes from Magic Ray from YouTube, and they say, "What trade deadline moves would you like to see?" Jack, let's start with you.
Good question. You got to think about the teams that are probably thinking about becoming sellers at this year's deadline. I'm going to steer clear of Ohtani discourse because that can, we could be here all day doing that. I think the White Sox have a lot of interesting pieces. I mean, Joe Kelly, ever since coming back from the injured list, has been basically unhittable. You have Lucas Giolito, who's a great starting pitcher. Liam Hendricks, who just beat cancer and is already going to be back on the field. These are all arms that the Mets could really benefit from. I know we got a good week of pitching, but we can't count on getting immaculate pitching every time through the rotation. We've clearly learned that through the first 6 weeks of the season. So if the Mets can get some bullpen help and maybe a starter in a big trade with the White Sox, I'd be a huge fan of that.
Yeah. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I would agree. I think, everyone knows the farm system is loaded with hitting talent and not pitching. So if they could get a reliever, because they're really wearing out they were wearing out the bullpen before this stretch with a lot of short starts, and that these guys might need a blow later in the season. And also in the playoffs, you can never have enough high leverage relievers because it becomes a 5-6 inning game, and who's going to have the best guys to shut them down? So I think Liam Hendricks or someone like that, if they don't have to give up on Mauricio, I would love to see that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We ask everyone on the show, what is the best meme that you have seen on Mets Twitter so far? Dan, do you have one?
Well, I'm going to go on it's a little bit of a stretch. I wouldn't call it a meme, but Greg, the Jingle Man, Real Black 14, and Jordan Simpson did a Let's Get It On parody, Let the Kids Play. And it's got about 150,000 views. If you haven't seen it, you're missing out on I probably watched it 50 times this weekend. It's unbelievable. So if you get a chance, go check that out. Jordan Simpson and Real Black 14 on Twitter.
Okay, yeah, I gotta check that out. I haven't seen that yet. Jack, how about you? Best meme?
Dan, that's a great pick. The one I'm going with, also not really a meme, just like a picture I think is funny. When Verlander first signed with the Mets, I was in a group chat with a couple other people, and they sent a picture of Verlander sitting in the front seat of his car with his shades on and his dog sitting next to him in the front seat, kind of just with his arms out like that, looking very human. I was like, this is silly. I'm going to post this every time he strikes somebody out. And I've rolled with it ever since.
Oh, that's so good. The Mets posted one, I want to say yesterday or the day before, and it was just like, it's about time to let everyone know that we're back up.
Yeah.
So spread the word. That was a good one. That was a good one. Okay. Flashes of greatness. Let's talk Francisco Lindor. Francisco Lindor's walk-off against his former team. That is a narrative that, it doesn't get much better than that. Jack, how satisfying was it to see Francisco Lindor get a game winner like that?
I mean, obviously, very, very satisfying. And, when you come with that price tag, there's constantly going to be people that ask questions of, is Lindor worth it? Is he worth that price? Can the Mets do better outside of him? But he's always kept a level head and he's always said the right things really these past 2 years. And there's no guy besides maybe Pete Alonso that I want more in a clutch spot than Francisco Lindor. He already has so many of these Mets walk-offs and Mets comeback highlights that when the moment matters the most, he's going to come through.
How about you, Dan? How do you feel
Yeah,
about the game?
I think especially on social media, he gets a lot of unnecessary flack. I think same with Carlos Beltran, both the contract and the fact that they're very smooth players. They don't get as much respect for how good they are, where people would make comments about Beltran that he didn't care or that they're not outwardly emotional. They're very level headed, but they're both tremendous Hall of Fame players that the Mets got in their prime. And like Jack said, because of the contract, people, you get a lot more criticism, but every time he does well, I'm happy to see it. And of course, against Cleveland, that was great.
Yeah. Dan, starting with you, do you think after the Mets swept Cleveland that it's safe to say that the Mets won the trade? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't do the whole won the trade because that could change in a heartbeat. Every time Jared Kelenic hits a home run, it's like, oh, Diaz is hurt. They didn't win the trade. Then when Kelenic was struggling, the Mets won the trade. So, I think it was the type of thing where it was the perfect situation for both teams. The Mets had both of these guys who were probably going to be expendable if they got Lindor. Cleveland wasn't going to keep him. Steve wanted to make a splash. He was the best player on the market. So I think it was one of those trades where they both won.
How about you, Jack?
Yeah, these teams make trades because they both think they're the winners at the time. That's how any trade in baseball works. With this, if you ask me what side I'd rather be on, I'd say the Mets side. And I know that, they traded for 1 year of Lindor and then got the extension, but it's just so different having that guy manning shortstop. I watched a lot of bad shortstop play in the 2010s for the New York Mets, and having a ground ball hit to short and knowing that it's going to get fielded every time is just a whole peace of mind thing. Plus the fact that he also can hit, 270 and hit you 30 bombs a year. I think the Mets came out the winners on the other side, though. Like Dan said, it's kind of hard to judge winners and losers because these things change from year to year.
Right. Okay, well, let's talk Starling Marte now. Starting to look like his old self. He was, virtually unrecognizable at some points. Going 3 for 4 in game 1 on Sunday and scoring the winning run as a pinch runner in game 2. Dan, you awarded Marte's 8th inning home run yesterday with a neon. Do you think that this is when Marte starts to turn on the Jets?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's very similar to the way the team started. The momentum changed, and I'm hoping, and snowballed and turned around. As long as he's healthy, which I don't think he's injured, but if he's healthy, I think he just needed to get a couple of things to go his way. And then some people forget how good he was last year and how much it hurt them when he was hurt in the playoffs. When he was playing well last year, he was as big a part of the team as Lindor or Pete or anyone else. He steals bases. He's got a great arm. He showed it off yesterday. So hopefully, if he plays the way he played last year, that was a huge addition to the team. That's like a big trade.
Yeah. Jack, how important is Marte's success to the team's overall success?
Hugely important. We're in year 2 of a 4-year deal, and we need to get as much as we can out of Starling Marte. I know that he's in the later part of his career, but like Dan said, he was an all-star last year. He got MVP votes last year. He almost has as many stolen bases as he did all of last year. So he's still capable of being that guy, and we saw it this past series. And I'm hoping that he can turn a corner because having the 1, 2, 3, 4 of Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, Alonso static throughout the entirety of last season is a huge reason why the Mets were able to win over 100 games.
Yeah, I think it's huge for his morale and also for the Mets team morale. All right, looking ahead, the Mets have a 2-game set against the Cubs in Chicago, followed by a 3-game set against the Rockies in Colorado before coming back home. Dan, let's start with you. Who is your X factor for this stretch?
I'm going to go with Alvarez because I think as long as he's playing every day, I think he is on the cusp of really breaking out. You could see his confidence at the plate. You could see him laying off pitches he would have swung at when he first came up. And he's one of these guys when he comes up, you just expect that he's going to do damage. The way he swings the bat, if the ball finds that bat, it's going to be a home run. So I have a feeling that he's going to have a big next 2 series.
Who's your X factor, Jack?
I'm going to go with the pitcher. I'm going to say Kodai Senga because he's the one getting this first start in Chicago. And now we're kind of in pass the baton mode. Scherzer gave a good start. Verlander gave a good start. Now we need one from Senga because this is the 1, 2, 3 we're going to be rolling into a potential playoff push with.
Yeah.
Senga looked great last time out versus the Rays. Let's build on top of that and keep the momentum going.
Yeah. Okay. Last question for you both. How will you spend the rest of your off day? Jack?
Going to be thinking about the Mets playing tomorrow at 7:40, wishing they were playing tonight, but also finishing the workday at Jomboy Media, filming some fun baseball trivia content, all of the good stuff.
Nice. Awesome. Dan, how about you?
I actually have I'm working on a logo for Mark Vientos today. I'm trying to get that finished, which potentially could be very cool. And then I'm going to my daughter's Little League game, and I can't believe I'm going to actually say this, but let's go Yankees, because she's on the
Whoa. Whoa. Come on, man.
It's upsetting. Believe me, it's upsetting. But luckily, they don't wear any Yankees gear. Just says the town.
Okay.
But
all right. So
for a
let's
few
go
hours
Yankees
tonight,
for the
I'm on
day.
Yankee fever.
At least you can say, you have to say, let's go Yankees on a Mets off day. That's fine.
That's right.
All right. Last quickly for the both of you. Yes or no? Are the Mets back? Jack?
Yes, the Mets are back.
Dan?
Absolutely. I would throw an F in there if I was Pete, but I'm just going to say yes.
All right. Thank you so much for watching the latest edition of Mets Off Day Live. And congratulations again to KC045 for winning the Athlete Logos Home Run Neon Chain. We will be back with another episode on the next Mets Off Day, Monday, June 5th at 12 p.m. For Jack and Dan, I'm Chelsea.